Dacher, how do you teach people to be happy?
You're always giving me the easy ones, Steve. Thanks. Yeah, you know, I mean, there's a really important new science, intervention science, if you will, of giving people different kinds of practices to cultivate well-being or happiness, you know, with rigorous controls. I tend to put it into 3 different bins, if you will. One is cultivate dynamic states of being, like awe or compassion, and that'll get you there. Another is to think about the social tendencies that you can amplify. Can you practice gratitude? There's cool work on striking up really nice conversations with strangers, right, as bringing you happiness or forgiveness. And a third is handling hardship through, you know, meaning and meditation and you know, narrative writing and the like. So there's a lot of progress being made on really shifting people out of hard conditions to a better life. And so you can teach it.
Edith, how did the ancient Greeks think you could learn to be happier?
Well, again, I seem to be separating Aristotle off from the rest of the ancient Greeks because he really was such a revolutionary and radical thinker on these things. I was nodding so hard because what you're talking about with the second type, the second's procedural, it's phronesis, it's practical wisdom. It's what you have acquired, the learning that you've laid down and the hard wires that you have been hardwiring all your life. And Aristotle is quite clear that you can habituate yourself to behave in ways if you start consciously and then it becomes unconscious. You know, this is one of the biggest things, it's habit. And that, to me, I mean, you don't drive geared cars, but we drive geared cars in England. And you know, when you first start learning to drive, you have to think every time, shall I go into third, shall I go into fourth, whatever. I never think now about changing gear because I've done it so often. So Aristotle, first thing is that you actually have to do, and this is actually in another book called The Eudaimon Ethics, but he actually gives you a questionnaire on your behavior, which you have to tick, and you have to be completely honest, because if you're not honest, it won't work, and then you won't get to be happy. But you have to go through all the things that you do, like, do you do things that are vindictive? Do you do things that are angry? Do you do things that are mean with money or generous with money? And you decide, you find out, you really stare yourself in the face and decide which ones you need to work on, which ones you want to maximize, like you need to be better at smiling, which ones you want to minimize. In my case, it was very much revenge. I love revenge. I've had to work so hard on being vindictive. But then you put it into practice, and eventually you don't have to think about it. Eventually you have accustomed yourself to not turning the other cheek, but sort of walking away or whatever. And my own habit thing that I found, I always come back to in my own head, is that I had these rather grim 50s parents. You know, they weren't bad people at all, but they never smiled when you approached them. We were all terrified of approaching them because it would be, what do you want if you were lucky? Seriously, they did not smile. So when I had my own kids, I made this very, very conscious decision. It was, hello, darling, what can I do for you? To the extent that my kids do this as an impersonation, as a party trick, like,